for us to come up with the original equation that we can see apparently goes through these two coordinate points, they say. All right, so I have the coordinate point 8, -5, and I have the coordinate point -6, +2 on the line, right? Okay, so in order to figure out what goes in my blanks, remember, this is my y-intercept, or the b, right? So that means where it touches the y-axis. So at what number is my line touching the y-axis? -1, very good. It touches right there at -1. So I put -1 in my blank. Okay? Then this is our m. Remember, m is our slope, and that tells us how we move to get from one point to the next, right? So you can pick any 2 points on this line, and you just need to see how you have to move to get from one point to the next. So maybe you pick this point that we just said, that -1 there, and the next time it crosses at an exact point is right here, right? So how much up and over or down and over do I have to move between these 2 points? Down 1 and right 2. Very good. Okay, and because I'm going right 2, that means my slope is positive or negative? Very good. All right, so there is our original equation. Okay, -1/2 x minus 1. All right, so just like our last set of notes, we're going to use this as our original and then talk about whenever we make the changes they ask, how do the two graphs compare. So they already are going to have the original written down and graphed for us. We're just going to take care of the new. So on number 1, it says if the slope of your line is multiplied by -1 and the y-intercept decreases by 2 units, what would be the linear equation that represents these changes? Okay, so what did they say they want us to multiply the slope by? Multiplied by -1. Okay, and which one of these is my slope? The -1/2 or the -1? -1/2. So what is -1/2 times -1? +1/2. All right, so my slope, when I multiply, turns into +1/2. Okay, and then it says to decrease my y-intercept by 2 units. Well, currently, my y-intercept is -1. If I decrease -1 by 2, where does it put us? -3. All right, so there's my new equation, okay? So again, which number tells me where to start, the 1/2 or the -3? -3. So on my graph, I'm going to put a point on my y-axis at -3. And then that 1/2 tells me to get from one point to the next, I'm going to go up 1 and over 2. Very good. And this time it's in the positive direction, so it's going to slant the opposite way. Okay, so they drew the original, we just drew the new line. And now they're going to ask us some questions to compare the two. All right, so first blank says the slope changed from what to what? Well, what changed about the slope that was originally -1/2 and is now +1/2? What's the only change? Right, it changed from a negative to a positive. All right, next question. Do these two lines intersect? Yes or no? Yes, they do. Okay, so we said yes, then they say, then where do they intersect? So they want us to tell them what coordinate point they're intersecting at. So where is that point? 2, -2. Good. Very good. All right, then they ask about the x-intercept. So remember, this is my x-axis. So So when they ask about the x-intercept, they're asking where it crosses that line. Okay, so originally it crossed right here. So this is at the original. Now it's crossing over here. So did the x-intercept increase or decrease? Increase. Good. All right. Then they ask, is your new line above or below the original? Huh? So remember, the y-axis is its starting point, right? Originally it started here. Now it starts here, so it is below. How many units below? How many? How many below the other one is it? 2 units, right. 2 units below. Very good. All right. And then the last question they ask is the new line steeper or less steep? So what is same, right? Because remember, steepness and less steep, then the number has to change. And our number didn't change, right? It was 1/2 and -1/2. So they're neither. They stayed the same. Trick question there. All right. Okay. Number 2. So this one says, which best describes the effect on the x-intercept of the graph? So this was the original. If the slope changes to 1/2. So now I'm going to have y equals, instead of -1/2, what they say to change it to? +1/2. Did they say to change anything about the y-intercept this time? No, so it's still going to be -1. Okay, so it still starts at -1, but now instead of going down 1/1, we're going to go up, down 1/2, we're going to go up 1/2. Good. All right, so before I read my answer choices, did the steepness change at all? No. Right, it stayed the same slope, so steepness didn't change. Okay. All right, so answer choice A said the x-intercept remained the same. So this is the x-axis. Do they cross it at the same point? They touch that line at the same spot? The x-axis. No, they do not. Okay, so it's not A. All right, B says your x-intercept becomes negative. So no, right? It already was negative and now it's positive. Okay, so not B. All right. C says the x-intercept remains the same. The x-intercept. No. D says the x-intercept became positive. Yes. It was over here at -2, and now it's over here at +2. And we said that the new and old line do intersect. They don't change steepness. Good. Okay. Next page. Oh, it looks like this was from the original question. New is steeper, less steep. We said that was false because they stayed the same, right? Okay, number 3. Again, they tell us what points it goes through. Okay, so still the same as the one on the front page. So y equals -1/2 x minus 1. Still the same equation that we were talking about on the front page. It says, which graph best represents this line if the slope is doubled and the y-intercept remains constant? Okay, so to double something, what does that mean I'm doing? Multiplying by 2. Okay, so which one of these numbers is my slope? -1/2. Okay, and you guys said to double it means to multiply it by 2. So what is -1/2 times 2? A negative times a positive is a negative, so -1. So -1x. Did they say to change the y-intercept? No, they said it stays constant. Okay, so it's still going to start at -1. Okay, so I'm going to look at my pictures. Is there any that don't start at -1 that I can go ahead and cross off? Yeah. So it has to be C, and we didn't even have to check the slope, right? But if we do check it, it does go down 1 and over 1. Right, so it does have the right slope. Very good. Okay, let's look at the multiple choice question there on number 4. Okay, it says that the graph shows the time it took Jamie to do 16 algebra questions while watching Netflix. The next day, her mother did not allow her to watch TV while doing her homework. Jamie was able to do twice as many problems in the same amount of time. If the new relationship is graphed on the same coordinate grid, which statement is true? Okay, so it looks like on here, in 5 minutes, they were able to get to, on y'all's, does it have a number there? It doesn't? Oh, it does? Okay. So these should be going up in increments of 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Okay. All right, so it said she was able to do how many more the next day? Twice as many. Okay. So if she was able, it looks like, to do 2 in 5 minutes, how many could she do the next day? How many? 4 in 5 minutes, right? Okay, so I would have a point here. If she was able to do 4 in 10 minutes, how many could she do the next day in 10 minutes? So twice as many. What's twice as many as 4? 8. All right. Okay, in 15 minutes, she was able to do 6. What's twice as many as 6? 12. Okay. So we kind of get the picture, right? Our graph is going to look something like this. All right, so let's answer this question. It says, if the new relationship is graphed on the same coordinate grid, which we just did here, which statement is true? The new graph has a y-intercept at 2. Yeah, right, still starts at 0, 0. Right? She can't just magically have 2 problems done. Okay, the next one says the new graph is steeper than the original. So which line is steeper? The one they drew or the one we drew? The one we drew. So did we get steeper then? Okay, so this one sounds like a good answer. C says the new graph is less steep. No, you guys just told me it was more steep. Oops. And then the last one says that the new graph would have a y-intercept at 8. No, again, we said it started at 0, 0. Good. All right. The last question, number 5. Flip it over onto that last page. Okay. So, on this picture, it says that the graph below shows the relationship between the number of gallons of fuel remaining in a truck and the number of hours that the truck has been driven. Okay, so time driven, our hours, is down here. The fuel in gallons is our Y. Okay, so it says, what is the rate of change? So rate of change means the same thing as my slope, or my M, right? Okay, and to figure out our slope, remember we just count how we get from one to the next, right? Okay, so if I start right here, and my next point is here, how many up and over do I have to go to get from one point to the next? Up 1 and over 1, okay? All right, now if I go over one segment, how many hours is that? How many is each segment here? 2 hours, okay? And if I go up, how many gallons is each line? 20, okay. So that would mean that we're going, rise was 20, over 2 hours. Okay, now, the only thing I have to ask you is my slope positive or negative in this picture? negative, right? Because it's going this way. So it would be negative 20 over 2, right? All right, can I simplify that? Does negative 20 over 2 simplify? To what? Negative 10. Good. So our rate of change is negative 10. It says what did this represent? Well, you guys told me that the 20 was numbers of gallons, right? And then the time was 2 hours. So this is the rate at which fuel is used. Specifically in this one, we said 10 gallons whenever we simplify, right? Just simplify to 10 over 1. 10 gallons every hour. Okay. Then they ask what the y-intercept is. So y-intercept means where does it touch my y-axis, which is the up and down number. So what number does it touch the y-axis at? 200. Good. So my y-intercept is at 200, or remember we can also write that as the coordinate point, 0, 200. And if I'm starting at 200, what is my y-axis again? What they put on there for words? Right, how many gallons of fuel you have. That must mean whenever you start out, you've got 200 gallons, right? So start with 200 gallons. Okay, then they ask for the x-intercept, which means where it touches the x. Very good. So where does it touch our x-axis at? What number? 20. Okay, so remember x goes first, so this one would be 20, 0, right? Okay, so my x-axis is representing the hours driven. So this means she will have driven for how many hours? 20 hours. Okay, so driving 20 hours. And once she drives 20 hours, is there going to be any gas left? No. So driving 20 hours means no gas left. All right. D says then they want us to write this as an equation. Okay, well, rate of change is my slope, right? And y-intercept is my v. So I just need to put that into y equals mx plus v form. So y equals, what's my m? What did we say? Negative 10, good. And what's my b? What do we put for b? 200, good. Plus 200. Okay, now they did ask us to put this in terms of G and H. Okay, so H is on my what axis? X. Okay, so H goes where the X is. That means G must go where the Y is. So instead of Y equals, I should have G equals negative 10, but instead of X, put in H plus 200. Okay, so E says, suppose your truck begins with 140 gallons. So instead of starting with 200 in it, now it starts with 140 in it. What would be your new equation? Okay, so if it changes from 140 gallons to, from 200 gallons to 140 gallons, is that going to change our slope at all? No. So the first part stays the same. Still G equals negative 10H. But now instead of starting at plus 200, where did it say we should start? At plus 140. Very good. Okay, so if I went from 200 to 140, did we move up or did we move down? Down. Good. So we would be able to say here that our line would shift down. last one. This time it says, suppose your truck begins with 200 gallons. So same as it did here, but it uses 40 gallons every 2 hours. So the 40 gallons every 2 hours is how we came up with our slope, right? So now, instead of it being -10, it says it's 40 for every 2. Well, can I simplify 40 over 2? What is it? 20. But we're still using fuel, right? So it's still going to be a negative. We're taking fuel away, so it's -20. All right, so my new equation, G equals, what did we say our new slope is? -20, good. H, and it said it's going to start with how many gallons in there? 200, yeah. All right, so this time, did it shift up or down any? No, not like last time, right? When we changed from 200 to 140. So this time what changed was our slope. And remember, our slope makes the line what? Steeper or less steep. Okay, so it went from -10 to now being -20. Remember, the negative doesn't really affect anything. We're just looking at the number itself. The bigger the number, the steeper the slope, right? So what's bigger, 10 or 20? 20. Yeah, because we don't care about the negatives, remember? Negative just changes the way the line faces, right? So, yes, 20 is bigger. So, we would be able to say the line